drag queen, well perhaps you're gay. Is there a point to all these fancy clothes? With all these buckles from your head down to your toes? It's very simple, but I'm just another girl. It's not so easy, but I'm giving it a whirl. Is there something that you're trying to prove? With all the makeup and the way you move, are you looking for some sympathy? No, I'm trying to be the best girl I can be. It's very simple, but I'm just another girl. It's not so easy, but I'm giving it a whirl. Like my martinis dry, cosmos I won't deny. Smoke those long cigarettes. Thank God I'm not dead yet. Done all these crazy things, short of a wedding ring. Just another girl.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Callista Solon, and you're watching NLC Trans. Tonight I'm here with my dear friends and co-hosts, Tara Alexander and Stacy Dozier. And Elise, once again, is behind the camera. We've been trying to get her to come on the show, and she won't.
At the very least,
But-
we have a live studio audience.
Yes, so anyway, so we're going to heckle, well, or you can heckle us, whatever. We'll heckle you. But anyway. Anyway, so here we are. So are you okay? Anyway, there's stuff going on. We were trying to put some stuff together tonight and had some problems with the computer, so things weren't quite going as well as we wanted. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about this past weekend's event. We had a CT equality event at Conn College, which went off. I'm sorry, still getting over that cold, which is going around and nearly killing everybody. It nearly killed me, I swear. But anyway, we had a nice event this past weekend. Yeah. We had some two senators. I have coffee. We had two senators, two state senators, and a state representative there, which was we had Andrea Stillman was there, and Andy Maynard was there.
And your candidate.
Yes, and Daryl Finizio was there as well. But we also had Kevin Ryan was there. So it was very good.
Thanks to them for taking time out of their Saturday to come out and
Yeah, it was really nice.
talk to us about citizen lobbying.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a good time, and Barbara also made some really great
Oatmeal raisin brownies.
oatmeal craisin brownie things.
Oh,
that
those
were
were awesome.
so good. I got to get the recipe. Barbara, if you're watching, I need the recipe.
Well, in exchange for her plate.
Yeah, we still have your plate. So, but those were really good. Anyway, I'm going off on a total tangent here. I'm sorry, but.
Conn College's LGBT Resource Center was kind enough to host the event this weekend.
Yeah, it was good. And in fact, Daryl will be on next week, so
Yep.
it's very cool. But
Daryl
here's
Finizio.
anyway, sort of unprepared tonight, but I wanted to talk. We could talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, but I did want to talk a little bit. This past week, I did a little. I spoke at UConn last week. It was last week, wasn't it? God.
You're asking
I think it
me?
was
It was last week at the Rainbow Center at UConn. It was actually
Last Thursday.
Patrick Comerford from who was with CT Equality and with Planned Parenthood, who I'm hoping we will get him on the show at some point, and maybe some of his people. Pat's really great. Pat's very, very lovable, very lovable character. But he's with Planned Parenthood and
Eastern Connecticut.
and CT Equality, and had asked me to come up and speak about discrimination, and so it was myself and a female to male, transsexual,
Yep.
Christian,
Christian.
who's very nice, and somebody who
From the Massachusetts area.
yeah, so from up north a bit, and hopefully we'll get to connect with him a bit more. But it was good. But anyway, it was kind of hard because it's sort of stuff that we don't talk about a lot, and it's something that I don't talk about. And I was telling you this.
Yeah.
I don't go down that road too much because it's sort of depressing to do that, and I don't want to drag people down, so I don't. I don't
No,
talk
but
about it much.
it's sort of necessary at times because we do try to put a positive light on things,
Yeah.
even when we're talking about discrimination in Connecticut. It is a minority of people, and our personal experiences are that we're strong, independent people, and we overcome a lot of it. But the reality is that the discrimination's out there, and not everybody is as well equipped.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and we do walk a fine line there of trying to. There are people out there in a bad way, and we certainly don't want to sort of contribute to an environment of despair.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to try to make people more hopeful, and like you said, we have had a lot of good experiences, and sometimes it feels like talking about some of the bad things that have happened to us as well sort of damages our positive energy.
Yeah.
Educate, but don't intimidate.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sort of, it's draining to sort of be in negative energy, which is
Yes.
what talking about those things can do to you. So.
Sure. Yeah, exactly, and that's sort of why I tend not to do it.
Right.
It and in this case, I was asked to do it, and so I did it.
Are you going to do any of that tonight?
I'm not going to I'm not going to dredge up a lot of stuff tonight. I'm really not. But
Because if you
I was-
don't, then there are a couple of points I wanted to make.
yes, and I will let you do it. I just in just 2 seconds. But anyway, I was asked to do that, and so I did it. And it was kind of hard for me. And one of the things that happened in that was that going through telling my story and going down that road, I started remembering a lot of stuff that I had sort of forgotten. And one of the things that I came to realize, and which is sort of what I wanted to talk about tonight, and which is the point I was trying to get to here. I'm having trouble with that, I know. But what I was trying to get to was how easy it is to sort of put the blinders on, and I am very, very guilty of that, of sort of blinding myself to some of the things that are going on, and it isn't until you sort of this is what I was realizing as I was sort of going back through this, was how much stuff was actually happening that I sort of managed to somehow not see. And in retrospect, you can kind of look back and go, wow, that wasn't as friendly as I thought it was. And
Right.
and I think part of what happens, and one of the things certainly that I've talked about before is more sort of gender discrimination, is the fact that back when I was pretending to be a man back in the old days, I knew that there was gender discrimination, and I knew that women suffered discrimination, but I never really took it as seriously as I probably should have. And it wasn't until after transition and I started to see it that I realized just how much of it there is, how pervasive it is, and so it sort of opened my eyes. But I'm sort of seeing that a little bit now. This sort of the fact that I managed to sort of blind myself to a lot of this, and I think that one of the reasons that happened was because during my transition, and we've all sort of gone down this road, you reach this point of just total despair. I got to rock bottom before I transitioned, and this is sort of a common thread. We hear this all the time. And so I was in a really bad place, and the fact that I reached that point and made a decision to transition and do what I had to do, and I started moving forward, is a really incredibly happy thing, and it's a very, very powerful thing. And it sort of changed my attitude to the point that that I was giddy. And I still am sometimes. I admit it. I can be kind of giddy, but I think that, and I don't want to say it's a problem because being giddy isn't such a bad thing, really. But I think it did kind of blind me in a way. You know, I was so happy that somehow I missed some of the bad stuff, and bad stuff happens every day to everybody. I mean, it just happens.
well,
Or you
but,
downplay it, you give it a pass.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the other part of that is sort of and we've talked about this before too. Sorry, is sort of a self-defense mechanism, because
Yes.
if you focus in on all the bad things that can happen as a result of transition, I mean, people are going to make snide remarks or sneer, and if you pay attention, if you sort of internalize all of that, you're just never going to be able to function. So I think we do end up sort of filtering some of that out just in self-defense.
Yeah. It's been said that, I forget who said this. Somebody said this. I remember being sort of reading it and thinking, wow, that's so true. But transsexuals have developed like the best coping skills of anybody on the planet because they have to. And so yeah, you do sort of learn to deal with a lot of really horrible bad things.
You develop a thick skin, and you know that whole notion of what other people say can't bother you,
Yeah.
because what a few people say is so hurtful that it would freeze you in your tracks
Yeah.
if you paid attention to it.
Yeah.
And so the people that are maybe lighter about it, who are still making snide comments, but just in passing or things you hear second, third hand, you just write them off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're still doing it. It's still out there.
Yeah.
And the story that you told the folks at UConn was particularly moving in that instance. You know, in the sense that I mean, you had meetings with your management, and
A lot of
a lot of weird meetings with your managers where they would encourage you to do the right thing for the company.
yeah.
Or, well, if you're going to be a female sort of office manager equivalent, you need to wear a t-shirt and jeans to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You run an office, you're in charge of paperwork, logbooks, rarely ever go into the actual
Yeah.
dirty, greasy work area, but you need to wear boots and play down your femininity and not dress appropriate to your job as a senior manager in the company.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, some of the stuff that, some of it was just, and I've said this before, and like I said, I'm not going to go into my whole story because it's just, I don't want to drag anybody down, but yeah, some really weird stuff. And I said this, I've said this before, I know I've said this to you guys. There was a point in time where I had to say, and
Yeah.
I'm sort of half kidding about this, but I found myself saying, my God, I'm a transsexual and you're weirding me out. You know, it's like, wow. Some really strange stuff. Some really strange behavior that I've sort of kind of stopped thinking about, but I, you know, telling the story, I sort of rehashed an awful lot of this, and some of it was downright weird. It really was, and it's just like, wow.
And I know you had told us about it before at a higher level, but when you were telling your story that day at UConn, what struck me most profoundly, and this is something I think that has resonated with our guests in the past, our audience in the past, most people just want to go about their own business, and they're not going to necessarily understand, but at the end of their little process of evaluating what does this mean to them, they come to the conclusion that you transitioning really means nothing to them, and they go about their business.
Yeah.
And that was the way it was for most of the people in your company.
Yes.
60, 65 people, and there were only 2 or 3 that had a problem with it. But they were your upper management.
Yeah. And
2
certainly.
people had a problem with it out of 65,
Yeah.
but they were your manager and his manager.
And one of the things that I'm sort of realizing is that one of the things that I've sort of come to realize is that I did to some degree have blinders on, and
Yeah.
and so I'm not, I sort of say that there were, that there were all these people that were okay with it, and honestly, I believe that they were, but I'm not.
You don't know.
I
for
don't
sure.
really know, and a very wise man who you will all know because he was just on before us, Father Russ Carmichael, who actually is a very observant man and a very good at sort of observing people and
reading people.
and reading people and I had actually just before I lost my job, I had actually taken him to my Christmas party, which was a lot of fun. And went to the Christmas party, and afterwards he said something very interesting to me, and which sort of blew me away. He basically said to me that he had spent the night watching the people in that room as a hall that we had for our party. He had just said that he had spent the night watching the people in that room watch me, and that I was in trouble. And it kind of blew me away. And then, of course, it wasn't long after that I was unemployed. But anyway, I don't want to go into a lot of. I don't want to get into that really. It's sort of a bummer. And but the important thing is, and what I wanted to talk about was how easy it is. And I don't think this applies just to us. I think, I'm obviously the LGBT community and the trans community specifically are subject to discrimination. There's no doubt about that. It's happening. We see it happen every day. And I don't want to do a lot of belly aching about it because I'm pretty happy all in all. But what I wanted to talk about was sort of perception and how easy it is, and obviously this is happening elsewhere to other sort of marginalized groups, but it's just blew me away, sort of looking back at all this and how easy it is to be blind to it, how easy it is to sort of not see it, and I think that sort of surprised me a little bit. And it's, I think one of my personal problems is that maybe it's not a problem. I'm not sure I want to say it's a problem because I kind of like that about myself, is the fact that I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. I tend to see the good in people and sort of, I don't like to focus in on the problems or the bad parts. I like to give people a chance and give them the benefit of the doubt. And I found that historically for myself, I think that's worked out very well. There have been a lot of people that have come into my life, people that that I might have otherwise dismissed, that I didn't, because I do tend to look for the good in people and try to focus on that. And I have had many people in my life that I'm very grateful that I've had in my life and have in my life that are part of my life probably because I did maybe overlook sort of overlook that first impression and say, you know what, I'm probably wrong about this person, and so I tend to do that. I tend to look for, even in a bad situation like a situation of discrimination, I tend to look to the good and see if I can sort of change things and change people's minds and.
But that means you're not blind to it.
I'm not. Yeah. Right.
It's that
That's true.
You're explaining it away. You're giving an excuse. You're passing it along.
Right.
You're-
I tend to do that, but I think that I am also guilty of missing some things, and again, it's sort of like looking back. I'm seeing things and going, "Wow, how did I miss that?" You know, and I think probably some of that is just distance. You know, you can be too close to a situation to really see what's going on, and distance can help. To sort of put things in perspective.
And as you said earlier, when you're transitioning, especially those times right after sort of coming out to family, friends, coworkers, the public at large, it's fairly euphoric.
Yes, it
you're,
is.
You're focusing on all the wonderful new positive aspects in your life.
Yes.
And, you know, it's a lot harder for little barbs to get noticed.
That's right.
To really
that's,
stick.
That's exactly right. Euphoric is exactly the right word for it. It really is, and it was for me, certainly. It was euphoric, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's people at work too. For like, in my situation, where after coming out at work, they would get not so much my name wrong, but get pronouns wrong when they talked about me in third person. Which sometimes is right in front of me when they're talking to someone else about something I said or did earlier. And it's like, well, you know, this is new. This is something that people have to adjust to. This is going to take some time. And 2.5 years later, it's still happening. I think a fair period of adjustment is over.
Right.
And you start to move into that question of, well, how do I don't think most of them are doing it maliciously, but now how do I move into that correction? How do I, you know, politely,
Yeah.
because I'm coworkers and friends with a lot of these people, but
Yeah.
early on I know there was a lot of making excuses doesn't sound quite right, but sort of what it amounts to is I'm not gonna get upset about that because, you know, this is early on and there's a lot of good things. I'm just glad they're not rejecting me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Exactly.
glad they're not freaking out. They're having some issues. We'll work it out. Yeah, and you know, it's easy to do that early on because you're euphoric.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I did. So your transition in the workplace has gone fairly well.
Yeah, fairly well. I haven't, fortunately, had the kinds of weird meetings you've had with management.
Yeah.
I haven't had any managers ask me if I thought people were going to leave in Exodus
Yeah.
as a result of my working there. I haven't had anybody talk to me about how many customers we're going to lose if I transition. You know, so yes, comparatively, it's gone very well. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's wonderful.
Right.
The people that I work with on a day-to-day basis have done really, really well. You know, and I don't see a lot of issues with my coworkers. But these are people I worked with for almost 10 years before transitioning too, although that was true for you as well.
Yes.
And the majority of your coworkers didn't seem to give you any flack.
Yeah.
But I should point out that traditionally, historically, it's 2, 3, 5 years after you transition before you start to feel unwelcome.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it?
And I think in a lot of cases, that's because there's just sort of this natural resistance to taking action right away. That people sort of get that, all right, this is new, all eyes are on you because you're transitioning. And I know I shouldn't do this, so I won't. And as time goes on, those kinds of self-imposed barriers tend to wear down. As attention moves away, things get back to normal. We've even commented from time to time about how you know, it's sort of happy on our part, but it's also not a good thing. We start to experience sort of traditional gender discrimination.
Yeah.
in the workplace. And that's a sign that people start to see you as female in our case,
Yeah.
and start to stop listening to your ideas and talking over you in meetings and
Yeah. Yeah.
and all the other fun things that happen in a
Yeah.
tech industry or in a male-dominated industry. But,
Yeah. And yeah, there is a tendency to go, wow, they see me as female. This is great.
This is great, but it's not great.
It's not great. It's really not great, and it sort of exemplifies what the kind of things that women have had to deal with for forever, and it's not right.
So, but there's a certain point, when things start to sort of get back to normal and people start to fall back into routines, and for the people that are going to have a problem with it, they start sort of testing the waters. They start making little comments to other coworkers, and if they don't get chastised by those people, then they make comments to more people, and it sort of very insidiously spreads until you turn around, as you said. You may not see or hear this happening. You turn around and it's become a hostile work environment, and you really don't want to stay there. Or in your case, your management comes right out and tells you no longer work here.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It happens a lot. I want to believe that it happens less than it used to.
I think that's probably
I think
true.
things are improving, but
There are a lot of, especially very big name employers across the state of Connecticut, who have adopted protections in their corporate HR policies,
yes,
for people who for gender identity or expression.
and kudos to them for that.
And there are even big corporate companies across Connecticut that are starting to pay for surgeries,
Yes,
starting to cover transition costs in their insurance plans, because they're starting to realize that in 30 years, that it's fairly expensive to transition, but over the course of 30 years, you might have 2 employees who take advantage of that particular benefit. So, over the long run, it's not a financial burden on your insurance plans.
right.
The fears seem to be that, well, if we offer this coverage, they're going to come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think
no
so.
one would do this if they didn't have to first.
Yeah.
Oh, look,
And,
here's something I can take advantage of. I'll just do that.
I'm going to go get a job with that company because they're going to. Yeah, well, you still have to meet all the basic skill requirements. You
Yeah.
still, it's absurd to think.
It is.
But it's a fear. It was a fear, and companies, big companies across the country and here in Connecticut are thankfully getting over that fear and covering what the AMA and the APA have both come out and said is necessary procedures.
Do you think part of it may be also that it improves their diversity score?
Yeah, you were talking about that. It could. I don't know what goes into the diversity score, whether things like insurance policies would, but it certainly could be an attractor for a potential candidate who might want to apply for a job somewhere.
Who might be concerned about working in a company that embraces broad diversity or idealizes broad diversity, because that really, frankly, is difficult to achieve.
It is, and I think in especially in this climate, but in general, when you go to apply for a job somewhere, something like that probably will factor into whether or not you want to apply for a what I want to say is the order of companies that you apply to. You'd rather apply to a company that sort of embraces diversity, but if they don't have any job openings, you're still going to apply to the one that doesn't have those HR policies.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think it certainly makes those companies more attractive.
All right.
Just like
Well,
having
to job seekers, but maybe also to to investors, to come to customers who might want to do business with preferentially with companies that are more diverse.
Well, and that's a good segue into one of our upcoming guests, Jen Trask, the executive director of CABO. CABO being the GLBT Chamber of Commerce here in Connecticut. They actually do put out a sort of GLBT-friendly certification when companies meet certain requirements. The LGBT Chamber of Commerce can sort of sign off on your business as being GLBT-friendly. And that Chamber of Commerce is, Cabo is starting to get more and more influence across the state. People are taking them very seriously. And so being a member of Cabo in and of itself and having the little certification is meaningful. And so there are a lot of things like that that I think do come to bear when you're talking about businesses and doing business with places. And yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And we'll certainly talk about that
Yeah.
when Jen is on.
4 or 5 weeks from now.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's all very interesting, and I think I'm sort of looking at a lot of this in sort of from the human nature standpoint, and it's like, wow, sometimes I'm sort of amazed at looking at myself. Wow, why did I do that? But I think that as a whole, as a group, we tend to do an awful lot of introspection and self-examination. So I think we tend to do that. But yeah, it was some of it was very sort of eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
And you transitioned at work, and your company was pretty good.
The corporate policy was very supportive of me and transition, and even after transition, actually I was better at my job, and of course I eventually got laid off. All of my, but I remain fully convinced, and that it was what it was. It was a business decision. The company was experiencing some hard times. Had to had to lay off a lot of good people.
Yeah.
My performance reviews were all were all ideal. They were. I was a top performer, literally. I got. You rarely ever see a sort of a 100% performance, and I saw that a number of times, and which was a big compliment. And I still feel fondly about my employer and wish them the best. It was just a hard economy.
It is a very hard economy, certainly.
But yeah, it was a Fortune 500 company, and you're seeing more and more that these places have very very supportive policies for transitioning employees. Because I think they're really realizing that you're going to get a better employee out of this. The economy's in a bad way.
Yeah. Well, and you sort of.
So I am convinced, and people will have their own interpretation, I suppose. But I remain convinced that it was a business decision.
Yeah. Well, and you sort of ran afoul of being in a company, in a smaller lab, in a larger company, when they were consolidating their lab resources.
Yeah.
Into other existing locations.
Right. So yeah, it's not the company. It's not the people I work with. I love the people I worked with. It's an awesome company, and I think that my situation may have been more rare, maybe than some, because I know people are getting laid off for being trans. I just remain.
That doesn't mean that if you get laid off
happen.
and you're trans, it's because you're trans.
Right.
Is the point to drive home there. We're not saying that every trans person that loses their job is losing it due to discrimination, but it does happen, and it happens at a higher rate.
Right.
Yes.
And I wanted to do some teaching, and I was able to quickly find a teaching job, and I think that was pretty awesome. So, because teaching is pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's just rewarding.
So you're going to continue to do that?
I would, yes. That I want that to continue to be part of what I do. I think it serves as a. I would love to do lab work again. I think teaching is a great complement to that. What could be a better life?
Yeah. Well, that's good. We should drag Elise on. I know she has some things she could add to this. Okay.
Sign them and we'll tell your story.
But anyway, so you know, all of this was, we sort of got into talking about all of this because of the upcoming legislation.
Right.
We have the bill, an act concerning discrimination.
Which will be raised any day.
Any day
in the
now,
Judiciary
yes.
Committee.
And I was very touched and pleased that so many of the people who showed up for the lobby training by CT Equality, specifically for this legislation, were not trans.
Oh yeah, right.
They were, you know, sort of allies of the community, and it was wonderful to see our friends support us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's been said many times that the vast majority of Connecticut does believe in fairness and equality for all of Connecticut's citizens.
Right.
They don't believe in singling out any group or letting a group get discriminated against when you know it's going on and you know you can do something about it, and it doesn't
Right.
cost you anything.
It may actually save Connecticut money. If you think about it, if you're, and there's different layers to this. For one thing, someone might argue, well, why does Connecticut need to do this? Well, to remain silent is just sort of acquiesce to it.
When you know it's going on and it's been documented and you've been presented with that information and you remain silent, yes.
Then that can be interpreted as
Condoning it.
an endorsement, as
Yes.
condoning it.
Yep.
So you can't remain silent for that reason. But that aside, if it's happening, and it clearly is, and people are losing their jobs, losing their apartments, can't find a job because of discrimination, then eventually they're going to run out of money and they're going to go on state support.
Yeah.
That's what costs money.
Yeah.
If we protect people's rights, so now that they can find a job because it's illegal to discriminate against them, then not only don't they go on state support, but we have people actively engaged as partners in the economy.
Right.
And that's what we all want. That's what trans people want to do.
Especially in this economy where you know all the upcoming elections for the next couple of years are going to be talking about jobs. Improving the anti-discrimination laws help people who have jobs keep them and help people who need jobs get them.
Right. Yeah, because we have to stop brutalizing people this way.
Yeah, the numbers are truly awful.
What was it? It was like 9 and change percent in the general population and 12 to 13% in the trans population unemployment.
Yeah,
14%.
27% lost a job. 27%, but that was just workplace discrimination. 83% reported experiencing harassment or mistreatment on the job. 27% lost a job. 24% were denied a promotion. 43% were not hired. This was a national transgender discrimination survey, but
And these are the results for those polled in Connecticut.
yes. So these numbers, and I read these I think last week.
Yeah.
They're horrible numbers. They really are. It's terrible. But yeah, there's no doubt that we've certainly seen enough of it.
Well, and the areas that this bill is going to provide protection against discrimination for people based on gender identity or expression is in housing, employment, public accommodations, and credit. These are exactly the areas
Right.
that we're trying to stimulate or support across the economy. You gotta have a place to live. You have to be able to afford to live there. You're going to want to go out and buy things.
Yeah.
Go to restaurants, go to stores, and not be kicked out because somebody perceives your gender identity or perceives your gender expression and doesn't like it. And credit. You need to get a loan. You need to get a mortgage. You need to replace your car. These are all positive things in this climate, and
Right.
it would be silly for somebody to turn you down, but they can without repercussion right
That's
now.
right. That's right. The way, and I know there is some confusion about this. There is sort of this general misconception that we're protected in this, and it's just simply wrong. We're not. We can be discriminated against without, with impunity. People can deny us. We can be fired. We can be denied a job. We can be thrown out of a housing, denied credit, and with total impunity. There is basically nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So-
What people typically point to is the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities in 2000 ruled that transgender people can try to find redress under the existing sex discrimination laws. But it's not codified in law. It's not easy for employers and proprietors to find. It's not, the CHRO doesn't necessarily they haven't been challenged in all of these areas to see whether or not they have jurisdiction over them. And lastly, as you pointed out, and we had some lawyers in one of the meetings point out, judges have to rule based on the law, based on what the legislature passes. They can take commission rulings into consideration, but they don't have to.
Right.
And until it's codified in law, so that there's a uniform standard definition for all employers and all proprietors, judges don't have to pay attention to it.
Yeah. So it is important. It's something we've been trying to get for a long time now, and it's an unfortunate thing that this legislation has overwhelming support in the General Assembly
And we have a governor who has promised to
and
sign
we have a
it.
governor that's promised to sign it. But it has to get raised. It has to get out of committee.
Well, and I don't know that we've necessarily talked about it. I printed this out if we were going to get to the bill today.
Okay.
I want to take just a minute to go through it. This isn't the first time that this bill has come up. It's not the first time we've talked about it. And I think it's important when people hear about the bill that's being raised this year to realize what its history is. This was first raised in 2006 as a House bill, and it passed out of the Judiciary Committee, but it failed to be raised on the House floor for a vote. In 2007, it was raised again as a Senate bill this time. It was passed favorably out of the Judiciary Committee, passed favorably out of the Education Committee, passed favorably out of the Higher Education Committee, passed favorably out of the Government Administration and Elections Committee, and as well as this, it was not called for a vote by the House, but it did pass the Senate that year. It was raised for a vote in the Senate and passed, I think it was 30 to 4.
30 to 4, yeah. That's overwhelming.
It was overwhelming, but it's overwhelming in the 30 to 4 category.
Yeah.
Not like 20 to 10 or something. I mean, 30 to 4. Only 4 people didn't vote for it. In 2008, it was raised again, and it passed favorably out of the Judiciary Committee, and they decided that year that it did not need to go to other committees if the Judiciary Committee passed it out favorably. In 2009, it was raised again and had a public hearing in the General Assembly, but failed again to be raised by the House or the Senate. Yeah, that was a House bill in 2008 and 2009. So I think the plan this year is they want to try to get it as a Senate bill again because it seems to have traction there. But every poll they've done of the legislature seems to have overwhelming support, and it has a very positive history. It's in many of these years, they were short sessions,
Right.
and they got out of judiciary late in the year. And as we were reminded by our 3 CGA members this past Saturday, they probably look at 1,000 bills a year, and only 200 of them become law, or 150 of them become law. So obviously there's a jockeying for schedule, and one of the things that makes a big difference there is when the legislators hear from their constituents that they want to have this addressed.
Yes.
Even when there's overwhelming support, it doesn't necessarily get any traction and make it to the floor, make it out of the committee, make it to a vote, unless they hear from people across the state telling them, we want you to vote on this, we want you to pass this. So that's where even all the supportive people out there who are happy to let us live our lives, we need, when this bill gets raised, we need everyone to step up once more and just remind your senators and your representatives that you do support it and you do want to have it brought to a vote. You want it to, you'd like to have them vote in favor of it.
Yeah.
But bring it to the floor, bring it to a vote.
Yeah, I think there's
We're pretty confident if we can get it to a vote, it'll pass.
It'll pass. It will happen if we can just vote on it.
But there has to be pressure from the public on the representatives and the senators so that they can pressure each other to get it moving.
Yeah. So.
Lobbyists help, but only so much. It's the citizens contacting their representatives that make the biggest difference.
Yeah. Sort of that civic duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would appreciate it, certainly. But yeah, it's hard. I'm kind of excited about all of it, but it's this is our year, I think. It's going to happen this year. I'm thinking very positively. But it really is a good thing. It's necessary, and we're going to talk a lot about this. We're going to have Diana on. Diana Lombardi is going to be on, and we're going to talk about that. So you'll be. We're gonna bug you about this in upcoming weeks.
Well, it's going to become very busy throughout probably late March and throughout April.
Yeah.
When the bill finally does get raised, and we're told any day now it'll get raised in the Judiciary Committee, they're going to schedule public hearings where you can submit written testimony, or you can go to the Capitol and wait your turn for your 3 minutes to testify why you want it or why you don't. And
I'll be there.
And then they're planning a lobby day in April, and they're really hoping to get it to a floor vote in the House and Senate before May rolls around, before we get too far into May.
Yeah.
Because the budget is going to become an overwhelming issue as the session carries on. And if it's not, if you're competing with the budget for time on the floor, you're going to lose.
You're going to lose, yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we need to muster as much pressure as we can early in the year. Unfortunately, right now, we're just waiting for it to get raised and get a bill number so that we can do anything with it.
Yeah, and certainly two of our biggest supporters, Waller and McDonald, are no longer
head of the Judiciary Committees.
Basically, they. I mean, not that it's a bad thing.
No, they're working for the governor now.
Yeah, but that's sort of what happens. We got a favorable governor who grabbed up some of the people that we sort of needed. No, leave them where they are. We need them. But
I think it's Representative Fox and
yes,
I don't remember his counterpart's name.
But hopefully, we're going to work on it. We're going to work on it. We're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep bugging everybody about it until it happens. We've been trying to do this for a long time, and it's important. It's important to me. It's important. It's important to us. It's important to everybody out there. Honestly, this is something that's important to everybody.
Yeah. And
whether they know it or not, it really is.
We can go into length about how everyone has a gender expression, and discrimination really boils down to discrimination based on your gender expression is really what stereotypes boil down to.
Yeah.
So if you disagree with discrimination based on stereotypes, this bill will help.
Yeah.
But
So,
one quick notice.
yes,
Because we're running out of time. We have about 2 minutes. This Friday and Saturday, this is our last plug for them. True Colors 18 at Yukon stores. 9 a.m. registration, Friday and Saturday. It's an amazing experience. You should go.
Yeah. It really is. Lots and lots of young people, and it is very, very cool.
You can go to www.ourtruecolors.com to get more information.
Yeah,
Or show up at UConn Friday morning at 8 a.m.
yeah,
Go to the Welty Auditorium, and
yeah.
I'm sorry,
It's-
the Jorgensen Auditorium. That's central.
It's right. It's cool. It's very cool. It's a really good event, and it's been going on for a long time. And
It's an amazing atmosphere if you've never been.
Yeah.
It's just so supportive, and you will absolutely feel welcome and comfortable.
and they have
by the end
all
of the
sorts
day.
of really cool workshops and stuff that you
Yep.
can do, and it's definitely worth going to.
And their conference guide's available on their website. You can look through the kinds of things that are going on.
And it's at UConn, which we love.
Yeah.
So it's always nice going to UConn.
So next week, we have a guest,
Yes. Sorry.
mayoral candidate for the city of New London,
Daryl Finizio.
Daryl Finizio.
Who,
So you'll want to tune in for that conversation
yeah.
in preparation for the elections this fall.
I'm sorry. Need to drink heavily.
We'll say goodnight, and you can have all the drinks you want.
So yes, Daryl will be on next week, and
Chris Clemens from UConn the week after.
Yes.
Awesome, yeah.
Chris Clemens is on the week after. Chris Clemens is such a sweetheart. He is just a doll. We like him very much. And
Yes.
Okay, I know we have to go.
Yeah.
Actually, all right.
You've
we have
got a
to go.
minute, and we have a minute and a half closing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We will go. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.